Nipa kunle namdul shin yunden kunki genpa semjen kunki nyen chikpo tamje genpa kunjan omen jenge genpa dan en dusum sanje kunki ngun semen chuku musumanten sebe zaywe lame shabla so wai dambi churum bichi nyamsuleme kulum sampo tartoki samba nijung tang da chizinki nimik tang dame tobiki Sherap ki pen la so tension pe koni jarju ki sim tang dimbe dambi chu sim kushu
The excellent intention to practice the sublime Dharma consists of the mind which recognizes the ultimate goal and aspires to that, which is renunciation. It also recognizes the faults of selfishness or clinging to the self, as well as recognizes the benefits of meditating and understanding the absence of the personal self. So with that motivation, please, I ask that you practice the sublime Dharma.
drup slap yutini drup dangnam drup sulgi gorim dela chesam mondu son koni kondrup jigu gore na dinde indu maran soyang kanda kondrup jebi chetula kondrup jebi gobatang dinde je kwaya ki chetang dazu kandi imens dinye yani chesam jikuni nazo nyamsulembe kaple
When we talk about practicing the Dharma, we talk about the way in which we do that, the methods that we go about practicing the Dharma, as well as the stages that we have to go through in order to do that. And we can discuss that through the conventions of study and contemplation. These things we need to do these two first. And it's with that study and contemplation that we can then engage in meditation or the practice itself. But again, in order to do this, we have to have an understanding of what the purpose of practice is. Why should we practice, and how to practice? So it's these two things that we engage with or come to understand by the process of studying and by the process of contemplation. And so this is our practice now. So it's that practice of study and practice of contemplation that essentially is the meditation, and that's where we are right now when we're talking about the Dharma.
Tesam gomsum kenani ini kondrup jetan bikola shipikape chetang kondrup sedi 표상기 땡라 팝샤만데 윤경화대가 공주스니 세가래.
Within the three, studying, contemplation, and meditation, right now we're talking about meditation, or the practice of meditation. And what is that? We can say that it's by coming to an understanding of what that is through studying and contemplation, and sustaining that understanding, or just sustaining that what we get from study and contemplation, that we call meditation.
Komla also 신에다 나동 제kom나 조금 리베나미 나다가서 바탕아도 신의 하도니기나 하동 검수다 제kom다 조금 니기나니 제법원도 손에 검건다 제kom스 이니슈가.
When we talk about meditation or familiarization, we can talk about shamatha or calm abiding meditation, and insight or vipassana meditation. We can also talk about or talk about meditation via analytical meditation or resting meditation. Now, within this context of this class, we're from calm abiding and clear insight meditation. Right now we're doing Vipassana, or clear insight meditation. And when we talk about analytical versus resting meditation, what we're doing now is the preparation, or what needs to come first, which is the analytical meditation. So right now we're talking about the analytical part that needs to come before the resting meditation.
지당 신에서나 샘디 네차 공부도 동을 탑다했어요. 라동스는 샘기 살차디 공부도 동을 탑다했어요.
Well, what is calm abiding meditation? That is a practice which emphasizes the aspect of stability or resting, this aspect of resting or stability. And it is a method in order to increase that or to develop that aspect. Vipassana meditation emphasizes the aspect of clarity, and it is a method of increasing and enhancing that aspect of clarity.
그림체가이나 신에디 몰라 검네 셈라 땡자 도조 토용도 아니 대체수 다동도 검네 아니 사차디야 공부도.
If we talk about the stages of these two kinds of meditations, or what needs to come first, generally it's said that first we need to practice shamatha, or calm abiding meditation, because we need to gain at least a good amount of stability in the mind. The mind needs to have some kind of we need to emphasize the need to create a stable mind as a basis. Then following that, we can engage in the Vipassana meditation.
나 조금 신행이다 대화열에 조금 하동이다 대화열에.
So shamatha meditation is connected with this the resting meditation, right? We have these two kinds of meditation. So resting meditation is connected to shamatha or calm abiding meditation, and analytical meditation is connected or is related to the meditation of Vipassana or clear insight.
조금 더 조금 뒤 이 다음에 나다마나 수다 저거 찾아봐요. 담보 아란솔라 마도단 로토비 왕기 나도 준비 주가 되는 거야. 네 뭐셔 버지니 델라 리피트 제바지니 뭐니 수다 주고도 주고도 따니 이 다도 짐바티 출도 닐루디 다 메바레도 산베티 텔라 파바티나 제바스 숨바레 다 덴데기 다 짐바티 출바임바나 니셰케니 다 메바티라 니 양다비 닐루임바 니셰케니 아니 덴데 니셰데 강라 파 조파 니셰데기 균경와들라 조금 라비온데다 지금 원도 전에 지금 디 제비긴 제부 니셰들라 되니 네바들라 샤바들라 조금 지금 디 규다 조금 디 제부다 차
So we have these two terms of resting meditation and analytical meditation. Right now in this context, we're talking about meditating on selflessness. So first, we recognize that currently we have wrong view or a misunderstanding about the self, meaning we have clinging to the self being present, that it exists, that it's real. So we recognize that this is a confused state of mind, a misunderstanding. How do we do that? We do that through reasoning or rationality. And that rationality is meant to make us analyze whether or not this clinging to a self is contradictory to the way things are. And if not so, how is it in line with the way things are? So it's through a process of rationality, through reasoning or logic, that we come to investigate or analyze what's going on regarding clinging to a self. Ultimately, we come to the recognition that clinging to a self is a confused state of mind. It's confusion. It's a misunderstanding. And we find certainty in this. We decide, we can make a decision. We can conclude that in fact there is no self. So this is what we call analysis. We're analyzing whether or not something is true or not. And so the result of that analysis is that we recognize, okay, this clinging to a self is confusion, and that itself is what we call certainty. You say, oh, I know it's true that this is a confused state of mind. We give rise, or this certainty just becomes stronger. And then we recognize that this is an authentic recognition, an authentic understanding of the way things are. And it is that's the basis for what we then call resting meditation. We sustain that certainty that recognizes that there is no self, right? So it's as if the analytical meditation is the cause, and its result, what it brings about, what it gives rise to, is the result, which is this certainty. And it's resting in that certainty, or placing the mind within that certainty, that we call resting meditation based on analytical meditation that comes before.
아직당 조금 더 조금 이긴 남이 당보 제가 조금 숙제했지. 아니 제가 조금씩 아니 조금 제 값으로는 조금 갈아강삼 제니들이 니시 또 이게 연도에 니까가 샤에드 계신 거를 했습니다. 이마도 제바양 장장 제니들이 아마 족사들 샤마토니 아주이나 오버 애널라이즈도 차선 거이나 양디 룹도 차 조금 매버지 봐 인디다 개침부지디 제kom 제디 갈아강삼지 니시기 연도에 참샤에 되겠죠. 참샤니 니시디 되겠죠. 양결 제법 맞아. 아주 신이 건백값을 뭔가 두제비 디바스가 님보디 댄차와이나 양결 가졌다 그래서 숙체라고 배는 심리파 인도그러봐 얘니 주 랩잖아 다 양결 대신 거 말아봐 되게 많이 맞지 내가 신신이니까 또 되는 거래 제바 제니 같이 가다 연구 말때 가라 항상 지니 시시기 봐 배는 알아서도 제바 제기다 다디 진바디 출발해샤 다 내바래도 삼나 내가가 참샤니 아니 조거에니 내가 좀 이마도 overanalyze, overthinking. 내가 제발 제 고교할 때 이네 가락한산진이 제발 참샤도 이 참샤니 대 강한 내바들 조금씩 신이 값을야 디나 신기지 제발지 숨어래 아주 뭔가 두체바다 뭔가 두미체바스 뭔가 두미체바스나 somebody 가와 있나 얘는 님보 맞든 봐 뭔가 두제바스리 님보 땐다 봐 봐. 아주 면다에나지 오버도스 사서 숙치다 지금 라야 되게 많이 주죠 참셔야 돼 그죠 아주 인지되라고 해서 knowing where to stop.
In general, when we talk about resting and analytical meditation, generally first we start with analytical meditation, and that we emphasize it. It needs to be emphasized. We need to work with it more. Then, based on that, then we can engage this resting meditation, right? But practically, how should we go about doing this process of first starting with analytical meditation, then going and proceeding on to resting meditation? When we're doing this analysis, there's certainly going to be some certainty that arises. You're going to come to some conclusions about the nature of the self or the absence of the self. You'll gain some certainty of the way it is, and that then when that happens, we can rest within that, right? What do I mean? Why am I saying this? It's because there's certainly a danger of over-analyzing, especially when we're doing analytical meditation. There can be the danger of only doing analysis and ignoring this certainty that arises, but then keep going but not resting, right? Not taking a break from the analysis, but over analyzing, overthinking it, or overdoing it when it comes to applying the reasonings, etc. Right? And why do I say this? It's because if we overdose, so to say, on analysis within the analytical meditation, actually there's not an end to analysis if you do that, right? You have to make a break in the analysis and to spend some time resting in the certainty that's developed out of that analysis, right? So once some certainty arises, then you rest in that. This is comparable to when we're practicing calm abiding meditation. There are times to apply an antidote and there are times not apply an antidote, right? And if you worry, say if you're doing calm abiding meditation and you overdose, say, on an antidote in order to reapply the mind or to make the mind stable or to do certain kinds of things that you think are trying to help your meditation, but actually they're harming it. They're creating some obstacles. But so the trick is to, when you have some certainty that comes through the analysis, be wise and take a break from the analysis and then rest within that certainty. So it's very important within the case of analytical meditation to know when to stop, know when to take a break, know when to shift your meditation into resting meditation.
Chitang tambo chekum mamsche, chokum nyumsche, azukaisa nishi de sebo yamarwa. Dini kalakang samji ni nishi kalakang samji kiyo dini chekum di nyungro tang, chokum di mangro tang. Tang kombi ki rinpa di chekum je, chokum je, yang kapka la pelma je ni. Rwa, dini susu da semla kare di pento che do.
So there's a time in the beginning that we certainly emphasize the need to engage in analytical meditation, but again, not too much, right? It's also certain that it's clear to us that in the beginning of this analysis, our certainty about what's being talked about, or certainty about what's being meditated on, is not too clear. But after a while, when you're engaging in and taking your time, there will be a certain amount of certainty that arises. There will definitely be a certain amount of certainty that arises, and it's important to at that time to rebalance and to at that time then emphasize resting meditation. There's times to first it said we need to analyze, then rest, and then to alternate, go back and forth. And so we have to be wise when it comes to going back and forth between analysis and resting, and to do it in a way that benefits our meditation, to benefit our practice.
Chekum tan chokum nibu di dini peda wati shuga ina. Chekum se di nga kala dati chebi suda sura, kala pe shibu jisu guga na ta ngora dati mungu chigurwa. Dini chokum se di dini kala chasan dati jesa wachila kanam lu dwa nyong ya gurwa. Di suda wachila dini shana dini medu. Chichina pedi ya medu.
We can think about analytical and resting meditation as like cooking, right? So first we have to prepare. We have to do, there's a process of preparation that comes when we're trying to cook a meal. So that preparation is like the analytical portion of meditation, the analytical meditation. It's like cooking or preparing, doing the prep work that's necessary. And once you've done that, then comes the next step, which is actually putting that food in your mouth and actually tasting it, experiencing the result of your effort. And so we call this portion of meditation resting meditation. So that's a good way to think about it.
Kashigita, Chicum de Nura Sawareshas, Shiranga, Kabame, the Chogum de Dini, was tapped with Lilabutu, Cesa Anima, Tanguni, Chogum Lokabu years and Kashiyan de Budwa. And that's it done the Soso Comjabion, the same Fletcher Tamla, Comditibu, Muzinji, and Muzidi, Kebayamara. In a Yangana, so the Muni Dani. Chugi capsula Sunsha Viki, Lamgi Ribatan, Tameto Sherapi, Kitana Samatabaina. Checum Sani Majevi, Chocum said Shirakale Hawaii. When I'm to color Dadipan and Kuni Majeva Jindanga to Wanyung is Labaina, Zumara was Sasonova. Carresna Nishi Mena Nishi Gunjong to Umawa. Gunjong Varchevala, Nishi de Kugrava. Chocum City Tindeki. Jeba Jeshabi, Nishi the Kungo Yoga Indu, and Dinishra Devachambole. Ani Dindegi Dini, come the money Danegata, come Siniba Chalva, upon Siniba. Timato Ani Mishakaya, Mebachedanga, Jogom Jigi in Slavaina, that Chidan Shineta, which is the Chagir, the Monegi, Jacomki, Nishi Latini, Jumishabi, know what child how Sharada. Not to dinner, Jocomi Upper Jomachavala, and Jocom the one to do.
So why is this example or analogy effective or appropriate? Some of us certainly find analytical meditation to be rather difficult, and which leads people to not like it so much, versus resting meditation, which many people find easier, therefore like it, right? So many people think, okay, I like resting meditation better. It's easier. It makes me relaxed. It seems to be something I'm better at. So I mean, of course, that's fine. I mean, that's certainly the case. But when it comes to practicing the Dharma or studying or traversing on the path, the authentic path, we need to understand or recognize selflessness, right? And in order to do that, in order to recognize that there is no self, we have to do the work of analysis first. Because without first engaging in analysis, rationality, engaging with selflessness on an analytical level, it's very difficult to give rise to certainty, to the mind which knows this is the case, this is true. Just like saying that you can satisfy your hunger without cooking, right? That just doesn't work. You have to do the work. You have to do the prep. You have to do the cooking in order to make something to eat, right? So it's just purely necessary that in order to give rise to the certainty that there is no self, we have to first analyze. If we don't analyze, we can't give rise to certainty. And if we don't give rise to certainty, there's nothing to sustain, right, in our resting meditation. There's nothing to sustain. There's nothing to essentially familiarize yourself with. So when we're talking about meditation, in this context, we're talking about gaining a meditation which is authentic, which is a genuine kind of meditation. And that cannot arise if there's no certainty, right? So that's why I'm emphasizing so much that in order to give rise to this authentic familiarization, this authentic meditation, we have to have this certainty. And in order to give rise to that certainty, first we have to practice this analytical meditation. Then we can go to the resting meditation.
And 가장 다신 깊이 타다 도전의 샤바나신 제바이나 둘기 지바티 빵을 제발라 주세길 타과기 땡돌라 둘두 미두스니 따제 땅이 빵고그레 마도 아니 우측 때문에 믹좀내다 둘메스니 장대바이나 둘기 지고 빵에 가보러 봐 내가 비즈 충을 친다야 양자야 되는 거야 이리다 조금 뭐도 마성비 조금 되죠 데려다와서 차
We talked about the example of the snake and the rope, right? And how this is a good analogy for the process of recognizing and for becoming familiar with the absence of a self, right? So the analogy is that we mistake a rope on the road for being a snake, right? And many people find that to be scary, right? If they think they see a snake, they're gonna have fear, right? And if we want to get rid of that fear, if we want to abandon that fear, what do we have to do? We have to actually analyze whether or not there is actually a snake there or not, right? We can't just close our eyes and say, okay, there's no snake. Temporarily, that might be kind of a fix to the fear, right? Just closing your eyes and just denying that it's there. But you open your eyes and it's not. That fear is going to come back. So when it comes to meditating on selflessness, it's just like that. We can't just deny that there's a self. We actually have to go through the process of analysis. And then through that analysis, we give rise to certainty and we engage in resting meditation, and it becomes very stable. It becomes a very stable mind which recognizes that there is no self.
산지기 도기나라 니 제금기 꼴라 송윤도 배텐데 샤와 배나 걔랑 막라 두고나 니 스스 마 약사 다디냠도 동렌제니와 동렌제니 encounter 제니 아니 다디파 좀 거라마도 막라 도니 니 믹좀니 니 데니다 다민두 스니 랍데바다바 제바이나 니 팽이마와 디인디다 만나서 다도 심바디 자다가 차디와 뉴몽바디 니 메버서바라 니가 동렌제고와 동렌 마제바이나 요거 말다 동렌 제바들라 가르치면서 맞지 제공스다 와
The Buddha in the sutras gave another analogy of analytical meditation. He said that analytical meditation is like going to war, right? When you go to war, you have to actually engage the enemy, right? You have to come face to face with the enemy in order to defeat them, right? On the other hand, if you just close your eyes and say, oh, the enemy's not there, the enemy's defeated, that's not going to work, right? You're not going to win the war by just closing your eyes and denying the enemy is there. Likewise, when it comes to the self, right? The self in this context is like the enemy, right? We have to actually engage with the enemy, come face to face with the enemy in order to defeat it, right? And so if we can do that, and what is that? That is called analysis. That's an analytical meditation where we come face to face with the self, we engage with the self, and it's through that process that we come to certainty.
Chibare Ka-Nying labanashi marazo thata dul tu tuni chibwa ki yong tu danji thongsa ki thakwa dega rang la pha donglen je ne wa chile chini tani deni chibwa de se ko gudu ma do dile dre chin ba ina ta negap ta se ba do yin bro ba ni ko ji negap ki ji ma ju chena ka re so na deni ki gunin gi nyimbo se ro wa thatu ki ta ki cha 이 동네 제반에 탈도 자와 동진이 있는 거죠. 봐. 이들 다음에 또 싫어. 자와 동진이 있는 거 있대. 내친 거, 짜친 거, 남기 뭐가 있습니다. 예.
Likewise, by the confused person which mistakes the rope for being the snake, that produces fear, that creates fear in that person. And what they have to do is to look at the place that they're afraid of, right? They have to look at the place which actually has a rope, but they have to go and actually come face to face with the projected source of their fear, right? They have to go through the process of going up to what they think might be a snake and to actually look at it face to face to see whether or not their fear is rational or not, right? If we don't do that, if we don't go through that process of coming face to face with the projected, what we assume to be real, it's purely a temporary antidote, right? And we just deny that it's there, right? It can be what's called just an antidote which pushes down the head, right? Or we can say forces down, or yeah, exactly, that's the right word. Suppresses the fear, suppresses what you don't like, right? On the other hand, it's not an antidote that completely uproots the mistaken mind, right? When we're engaging in the process of analysis, whether or not there is a self or not, the antidote which completely uproots this misunderstanding that there is a self is what is called the wisdom which recognizes the absence of a self, right? This is the very essence of the Buddhist path. And so in order to give rise to that, we have to go through this process of analysis.
아니 먼저 상기기 생기 남라지도 가르치고 그래서는 다좀 봐서 봐. 가르치는 상기라 다좀 봐서 쉬바래서나. 네 말한소라 뇌기기 남기 다시 그래서. 다디치당 레당 녀몽과 두사디 다진의 두부. 다진디 백 매바 서바인 다진이 다디 자와단 지디 좀 봐. 아사지 차디가 있는데 아니 먼저 다좀 봐서 쉬고.
The Buddha has many names or many titles that is attributed to him or any other enlightened being, right? Out of all those names, we call the Buddha the foe destroyer, or arhat, right? And so why do we call the Buddha the foe destroyer, right? The actual foe when it comes to the Buddhist world is the inner enemy, which is the clinging to a self. All of karma and afflictions are inherently tied to this misunderstanding or this confusion that clings to a self, and whoever completely uproots this confused mind which clings to a self is what we call that person who has destroyed the enemy, destroyed clinging to a self, and that person is what we call a Buddha.
Tatini manzu jekom je yungdu jidang kange kashi shio. Jidang manzu jekom je yungdu tambodi a직 samlo mangbo jidang godi manzu tangche yungwa jidi. Di dis kago ya. A직 신에 다와는 공업지라 센제진이 내셔도 싫으시라 야가 지고 와 아디시라 자기래는 깔리 카쇼데 가르레스나 디 나고도 담에 조금 용도 디 이다 소설라지 이 가사는 직디 비슷한 거야 하나서는 sense of friction shukshimbo chungwa jezang azu shira maka bata chungwa tambo tama karresna dak se de la krangich defense mechanism jerna dakzin la pe shukchungwa wa inde imba indi dazin ki khade chaken suduna lamsang ko gi jipa paji 매버서에 탑시단 그래. 근데 이마서 아니 가나서 당번이 딱미 검슬라 근데 당아서 인지깔에 마서나 그래서 그런 거야. It goes against yourself. 봐. 네가 수제 가그 말아 봐. 제사 아니 되려야 sense of friction 좀. 딩딩딩에 가산 쉬는 아주 제공지 또듯이 서바콤으로와 long term vision 되고도 마도 티티스제 요샤는 이유가 말이에요. 그냥 검토나 이니시거나 편도 좀 보시라요. 와 시라 편도 좀. 디니 찍디 상로 망고 땅고 여봤다. 니디 스스 소속이 against the 두고 여봐. 디딩 아주 시라지. 초아디 야보시고요. 아니 미만 제외기 제산 참샤샤와.
When we engage in analytical meditation, we run into difficulties. Generally, the first kind of difficulty that we find ourselves having is that it requires a lot of thinking. It's a very it creates a lot of thoughts, and it can make us relatively fatigued by doing all of this conceptual work, versus saying, a kind of meditation like shamatha, a calm abiding meditation, which you just place your mind on a single object, and it doesn't really require a lot of thinking, mental processes in order to engage with that kind of meditation. So certainly in the beginning, many people find it difficult because it requires this mental acuity and creates some fatigue. Another difficulty that we can run into, or that we certainly do run into, is the sense of friction that we have when it comes to meditating on the fact that there's not a self. We generally don't like that at first. And why is that? The self, or we could maybe in this case the ego, right, has a lot of defense mechanisms when it comes to being challenged. When the self is challenged for just simply existing, it creates a lot of friction in us. And why is that? When we engage in this kind of meditation, this clinging to a self, this ego clinging, does whatever it can in order to make that meditation stop, to get rid of that mind which is challenging its existence, right? It tries to destroy or break up or to create obstacles that doesn't allow that process to continue. So practicing and meditating on selflessness is essentially going against yourself, right? And it's that going against yourself which creates a lot of friction and tension within us. And we most of us don't like that. It's very challenging to go through that process. So that's why I said in the beginning, this analytical meditation, when doing it, you're going to have some patience, right? Please tolerate this discomfort that comes with meditation. And by doing that, please continue the meditation. It requires time to get over this initial discomfort and struggle that comes with questioning the existence of the self. But if you do engage in this meditation, if you do continue on and don't just give up immediately, meditating on selflessness is extremely, extremely beneficial. So first, it's difficult because we have to engage in a lot of conceptual work or thoughts. And two, it's difficult because it's literally going against us. We feel that we're going against what makes us, right? This self. And it's because of these two things that many people give up very quickly or very soon after they start this analytical meditation on selflessness.
인식이가 my way 세슈도 와. 다 디기 도서 도와는 아주 람사 디스컴프 차요 와. 스스 삼바나시 마주나 난 탐제 마티 과레 너바레 두자레 센트리 삼보스 거인 와. 디차상데 그래. 다진기 디 defense mechanism 차시죠.
When it comes to questioning the self, it's uncomfortable, right? Because it goes against what we could say is my way, right? If anything challenges my way, the way I do things, it's considered not good. It's something that goes against us, right? That's not how I want to go. That's not how I want to do things. So it's this mind that's being challenged, and the ego clinging itself will do whatever it can to bring up defense mechanisms to challenge that kind of analysis.
아니 빨리지도 가르래서나 지당 안주 만세바지기다 강에 지태 용도 강에 들레 열탑된 안주 만세바지 레로 왕도시네 마도 강에 들레 돈은 제게 삼도 미뉴어 봐 가래네 안주이나 가서 같이니 easy way 된 안주 담그러 봐 지구지 야래 다 나진 세디 걸 숙청버지 여바다 되니 Tadi nga say di ngarang la wa against la dogi me toda di dewa me ba indi tini karasa warwa ji azu kati nenji the easy way segi wa tanda dazun kom se bi sama damen to bi sherap amare damen to bi sherap kom se bi azu di easy way lam kala dogi amare wa tadi la ba na shi dadi tang muni chini face chini donglen chini ko tang tu ni wa khade cha ni ni azu di ngazu man che ba ki logo shira ya mar wa azu man che ba ji pa chi khade cha mo ko na sam ba da chi ngana su nam ji mi sin na la ni su shun shun ni yu do wa nyok da ji ju na nyok da di ki za wa la do ni me ba se ngazu shira san ko mi do wa ne gab ji cover up chi na di sa sa mo ni yu do di ngana su da rang shi da chi le di da dazin damen do bi shira kom se di ko ga re da dang ko face chi ge ba ni di yang ma su shira ji karasa it's not attractive it's not attractive meditation.
Most of us find it difficult to practice selflessness meditation for these reasons, right? It's a difficult thing to do, and it's because it's difficult. We tend to want to avoid things that are uncomfortable, and this is because we're lazy when it comes to engaging with things that are uncomfortable, meeting conflict. Essentially, it's just a very uncomfortable thing to do. We can't get face to face with with things like ego clinging or things that are uncomfortable in general. We normally want to find the easy way out, right? We want an option which is easy, the easy way. And we normally choose that way, and that leads us to not coming face to face, not approaching these difficult things, right? Especially when clinging to the self, this ego clinging is very, very strong. We think it's this I that thinks, wait, how can I go against myself? This is completely uncomfortable thing to do. It's not something that I want to be associated with, right? This ego clinging, which is being challenged by this analysis. It wants the easy way out. It doesn't want to have to be challenged by this which is called this wisdom, right? This wisdom which recognizes the absence of a self, and this wisdom, the path which brings about this wisdom, which recognizes the absence of a self, is not easy. It's not an easy or comfortable path to take, because it requires a lot of courage to do so. Think about coming face to face with any kind of enemy or any kind of challenge, meeting with that challenge, really getting in its face, is not easy to do. Most of us don't have the courage to do it, right? And what do we want to do? We want to avoid the conflict as much as possible. We want to cover it up. We want to ignore it. So again, this is not a very attractive meditation. Coming face to face with these hard or difficult challenges is not easy, and it's not a pretty or attractive kind of meditation to engage in.
Good news sebarwa. Manatula kare poba kare koresana, ishe kare koresana. Tipe inga chumore. Dazing the hopes to stay on the ngazu darwa ta ko pe top chumbu nipa chumbu shuk chumbu da usier wa ini ngazu lamsang tangbo ni inchikala masuna intimidated to char wa ini chagyo yo kare resena dazing di katsu moko katsu shuk chumbu yoba ine ya ko kare 출발와 덴바 말이 지사 계란게 따제 땅도 거 슈처 주줄 누구 말이 거 니바도 마마 냠도 거 출발이 봐서 내룩 많이 봐서 다 다음에도 베시랍디 단단 아주 냠 춘춘 니바 춘춘 마도 매나야 거 가래 미투니 곰바이나 거 덴바라 와 뭐여기 니수 이마송사 갈라 간삼지니 나주 다진라파 카디 짜토 그래 니 나주 컴피텐트 인지 미치고 그랬다 시작을 따와라 마도 당보니 도 스타디오 다 다음에 또 비시랍데 빼춘중을 해셔 다진디 슈춤을 땅에 카디 짜토사 말에 삼성 바이나 그러와 빼셔나 나주 타다 둘도 투용바 값을다 디둘 그런 주마 임바송사 코 가주 먹어 가주 신앙 타워 진바이네야 갈래 코 매바 차드에 지다 지 주마 임바라 트드에 지마도 콩원이 둘 차요에 깝거나 요 말와 이니 둘 매바킹이 실은 아주 김세 망고여와 디파 세르세르드 디고 네바시르시르드 갈래 코 뎀바라와 가게디 타바라 디 따와데 마주가 뒤에네야 당보디 슈춤보지 개고 그래 내가 다진디 슈춤좀 마도 매네야 코 마트로 바타 너비 니수리 바타 뎀바 임바송사 다진디 내가 가주 슈춤보지 여바 있는 코 출바 임바다 너비 니수다 미팅바지 임바송사 다다 람사 매버스 마트네 갈래 니코 갈래 카디 짜니더니 매버스 투기레 삼비기 나서 이네 가서 댕당 컨피덴티 고도와 이 다가서 컨피덴지 샤고 말 뭐이니 수다 좀 봐봐 덴바세트 코 덴바라로 봐 주마서 두고 봐 남의 또 베시라 덴바레 다진디 주마 출발해 다디 먼저 다음에 건비 토마토 따와디 되지 보고 봐 댕지
But with that said, there's good news. The good news is that we have to have the courage or the confidence or the trust that recognizes what is true, that selflessness is true and clinging to the self is not true. So that we need to have that confidence. For the self, which we consider the enemy in this context, can be very powerful, can seem very, very strong, but it's important not to be intimidated by that, right? However strong, however powerful it may appear to be, this ego clinging, this sense of I, no matter how it appears, it's always going to be just a confused misperception. It's never going to become true. It's never going to be true that it's actually truly there. The more we analyze whether or not this is true or not, because the truth is on our side in this battle, the ego clinging is going to get less and less. It's not going to get more and more as we continue into our practice. It's never going to be the case that it gets stronger, because it contradicts reality. It's just not true that there is a self. Of course, in the beginning, it's hard, it's difficult. But if we continue, it gets easier. Why? Because it's true. That's just this simple fact. We need to have confidence in that. And even in the beginning, when we're like, okay, well, the wisdom which recognizes that there is no self is nowhere as strong as this clinging to an I. But we have to remember that we shouldn't be intimidated by that. The same thing when we're talking about the snake and the rope, right? However scary it might appear that there might be a snake out there, it's never going to be true that it's actually there out there. The rope is never going to become a snake, right? Because it never was a snake. And there's many reasons that we can apply. There's a lot of rationality that we can use to our advantage that will lead us to have more and more confidence that this is true, that this is the case, that this is in line with reality, that there is, from the example, there is no snake, or there's no self. And so, as even in the beginning, when our recognition of selflessness is not very strong, we can rely on the fact that this confused state is not in line with reality. That we don't need to be afraid of it, that we need to have confidence that this is true. It's just that. It's just truth versus fiction, right? It's true that there is no self, and it's completely false that the mind which clings to a self is completely false. It's just a confused state of mind. So, in all, what can we say about this confidence? This confidence is the view of selflessness. And even in the beginning, we need to have this view or this confidence that this is the way things are.
So, 조금 기콜라 슈거래 다니 아치 슈이시나 가상아 주다 조금 콜라 건당 콜라 슈거래 아니 양 카시에디 제가 망고 제니 참샤마도 조금 샤마도 바이나야 아주 오버 애널라이즈 하는데 콤나야 또 파시티 요소가 수수이네야 탕치스 바데 대인들이 조금 당 조금 이가 고고여라 조금 당보 마음수지 아니 조금 라샤 그와 되게 강삼진이 벨마 제바이나 되게 맞을 건데 야고 인그레스 제 되게 이빠들라다 데 고미용도 강에 가시신 거를 김신 치기다 즉삼바당 보여봐 김신 이빠들다 맞지 스스게 against la 소소 도구여 봐 인디 디토지 sense of friction discomfort yung kare ina disu donen che ke chu tini chigida kangdar nga su dazin de ka su shukshum ba yena mena ko tulba yimba ta ani damen to be shirap ko chunul ma chmena ko demba yimba song sa di namshin na gale ani damen to be shirap ko chi gyalki re sanbeki semla yichidi nyane komkyabe keju anda lamsan je dazen churu machin bai dinega churu es shube.
So today we talked about this relationship or the differences between analytical and resting meditation. In the past, we talked about the different ways of going about practicing an analytical meditation, but I thought it would be important to maybe state that there could be difficulties when it comes to, or address the difficulties that might come when we practice analytical meditation, and we do a lot of it. We do a lot of analytical meditation without alternating or taking breaks and going into resting meditation. Essentially, the dangers of over-analysis or over-analyzing things, because it can create a lot of obstacles for us, or that can just be the obstacle itself, right? Over-analyzing. It can create a lot of fatigue, and we can become very tired doing too much of it. So it's certainly the case that we need both. We need both the analytical part and the resting part of meditation. First, normally we engage in analysis and go into resting meditation, and then there's a process of going back and forth and alternating between the two. And this is a very good way of going about practicing analytical meditation in tandem with resting. We also talked about the difficulties that can come when practicing analytical meditation. Firstly, that it causes or involves a lot of conceptual thinking that can make people feel uncomfortable or find it difficult or fatiguing. And secondly, that this kind of meditation feels like it's going against us, going against the grain, going against us personally. And there's a lot of friction and tension that comes with that, and it can be very uncomfortable. But what I suggest is that we need to face it. We need to meet it. We need to address it. There's that certain kinds of confidence or courage that is necessary within this process of analytical meditation. And then most importantly, it's necessary that we keep in mind that however strong the clinging to a self is, it's never going to be anything more than just a confused state of mind. It's never going to be anything more than a misperception. And that's good, right? Because it's true that there is no self. And even in the beginning, when it feels that the wisdom which recognizes that there is no self is so much less or weaker than clinging to a self, we can always rely on the fact that selflessness is true. And by analyzing and going through the process of meditation, we can have the confidence that that recognizing that there is no self will win in the end. That it will gain victory, win the battle over this confused thinking. And so it's through this process that, through this confidence that we can have, that will really be extremely beneficial in our meditation.
And the Ripe Chepacheni Ubini Sultan Mitumba Trupala Truba Imba Musini Ani Matubeki Chatela Nishishiki Nuwach to Dilla Checoms Lava Nintendeki Nishe Dan Nuwatumba De Namjuani Young Young Tembo Young Gyurme Young Sebo Young Wata tendeki nyongwa digitini nyongwa dan nishi di misalwa di sebo seba tang gyun tundu ni gyun nungu seba tang ani mazokwa di yongsu zogwar sebi tordina nyongwa degi sagi zogsungi yondeng kongpedo tangme chadina karisi chokom sini.
So it's through analysis, using reasoning, that we engage in analytical meditation. And what it does is it leads us through a process of recognizing what is true versus what is not true. We come to a recognition of the way things are. And this recognition of the way things are is the exact opposite of confusion, right? It's non-confusion, right? And that non-confusion is what we can call confidence or certainty, right? The result that comes through analytical meditation is this certainty. And gaining that certainty is what we call meditating through analysis. And then what comes next is a sense of experience, really feeling what this means. And at that point, it's certain that it might not be very clear. Might not be very strong, this recognition, but it's still there, right? And there's this added sense of some kind of gaining of experience of what it's trying to point out. And in order to make that more clear, make the certainty and the experience that comes from that more clear, more extensive, and more maybe perfect or complete, right? We have the increasing of its clarity, it's the extent of its bounds and its completeness. The process of raising those factors is what we call resting meditation. It's through resting meditation that we can increase the experience, increase the recognition or the certainty that comes through analytical meditation.
So, one the technical terms linear job that the integrate you to women have. This city Nyawati Kanga, Younger Cheba Machinirva, Frankandi, Imbatilla, Tepa Manimbache, Kare Imbati Karamato, Shapat, any jokas. Integrate Kami, Dennis, and Tikashishwa, Frank Tenny, Kong.
When we talk about meditation, there's a technical term that we can use when we're talking about this this experience that comes through when we're going through this process of meditation, and it's this resting vividly or resting very. It has this idea of clarity or vividness, an immediacy maybe, in resting. What do I mean by that? It means that when this experience comes about, we don't on top of that do any more analysis. We don't do any further looking into in what's going on analytically. But it's based right on that experience that we rest. It's right in that moment, right on top of that, without doing anything else, without adding anything to that experience, but just being purely within that experience, vividly within that experience, or immediately within that experience, that experience is really emphasized.
Machu any letter, which is a child matter. Send Machu, Imba Tagara, Ranshin the shop,
we can add to this idea of vivid resting this quality of uncontrivance, which means not adding anything else. It's resting within the experience as it is, without adding anything, without contriving anything on top of it. It's a very pure kind of experience of what's going on.
Janju Simju Rimboche, Maye Panam Gyurme, Keba Nyambara Meba Yang Boni Bondu Pervarai Shu